Hi, I'm David King, the editor and associate publisher of The Collaborative, joined by Katie Cusack, our editor and page designer and all-around music person. I gotta laugh.
Exciting.
And today we're joined also by Josh Coletto of Nighthawks. It's a pleasure to have you in. We recently had Nighthawks on the cover, or at least one of your really amazing dishes.
Yeah.
And it was so fun to get to come in and talk to you about all that stuff, but also to eat there for a number of work-related reasons.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here. This is really awesome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And so normally we were just talking about you'd be in the restaurant or at least starting off your day, and you mentioned feeding your daughter toast with peanut butter and whatnot.
Yeah, a toast and peanut butter breakfast, and then luckily today my mom came and I was watching Yarrow for a few hours so I could come here and get to work. And Fridays is a pretty big day, always busiest day of the week. So,
do you get to cook at home? Do you try to avoid it?
I choose not to most of the time. Usually my partner Kate cooks like most of the meals and does all that. She says she's the only person that doesn't get to eat my food, essentially, because
Wow.
I don't get to cook for her too often.
My wife is the only person who does. No, wait. My wife is one of the many people who don't read my stories.
Well,
So,
I understand.
Yeah.
I
It's
understand.
the way it is.
Gotta have that degree of separation.
Yeah,
Make you really appreciate it more.
it's true. It's true.
It's true. It's great.
But so Nighthawks, it's sort of amazing the way you got here. Your reputation precedes you in a lot of ways. Obviously, before Nighthawks, I was familiar with the pop-up brunch, or it wasn't even a pop-up. It was a regular rock and roll brunch at Low Beat, and then also Cheese Traveler barbecues. That was really cool. The folks that were involved with Cheese Traveler were great dudes. So these were events that got people sort of out and eating food in ways they might not normally. And I think it brought a real sense of excitement to the area. And now you're sort of doing it in an established place. So can you tell us a little bit about how that came about?
Yeah. So I graduated from CIA in like 2007 now. And then basically as soon as I got out, I moved to Portland, Oregon, because I, read a New York Times article that was like, this is the new food scene, like this is where you want to go. And so I was like, oh, I guess that's where I want to go, and moved there and ended up working in some like really awesome restaurants. Clyde Common was one of them. I worked at Screen Door, worked at a place called a Pizza Shoals. This was all like at the same time. I've worked a lot. I didn't really do much else. I played in a band too. That was just something I had to do, which was great.
Yeah.
That band was called Unrestrained, and those guys were really good. And then, I kind of got drawn back to this area through music. There were some people that I had played with for years. Moved back, ended up just playing music and being like, I don't really need to cook that much right now. I did it for like a couple years straight in Portland, working 6-7 days a week.
Yeah.
And then, did the music thing for a while. That was fun. The band GOP that we played a lot around here. And then, I was like, I need to start cooking again. I started working at a cheese farm, Old Chatham Sheep Herding Company, making cheese and yogurt, and kind of being like, I want to do local food. That's like all I really care about as far as that goes. And there wasn't really a lot of it going on. There was a little bit. And then I found Chef Consortium soon thereafter and started doing events all around the area. I worked with Noah Sheets and Mike Lappy, Rebecca Joyner, Nikki Kagan, all of them. And we all kind of would do different events, different education things. We would do opening for the Cheese Traveler, which was great. We did the opening for the Co-op when they opened the new location. I would do demos in Washington Park. Whenever there was like a street festival thing, we'd have a booth and we'd talk about like, hey, this is all local food. Like, it tastes awesome. We don't do anything to it. Just eat it.
Yeah.
People were receptive to it, especially because it was free.
Yeah.
But then, I kind of started just bouncing around at different restaurants, trying to find something to do for myself. And no one really wanted to hire me for a sous chef position because I didn't have that on my resume. But, I felt ready for that. And so I kind of just decided I'm going to do my own thing and, be broke and figure out how to make my own money, like cooking at pop-ups, doing catering events,
Yeah.
doing just whatever I want with food. And, it seemed to like just take off. And then I just started doing more and more. And, Howard Glassman, my business partner at Nighthawks, he was so like supportive to me. And when I told him originally, like, hey, I'd love to help at the lobby come up with a little menu, I'll just do it in exchange for some free beer when I go to shows. And he was like, great. And we sat down and talked for a while. And then eventually it came up like, hey, let's do a brunch. And I was like, great, I want to do a brunch. I had tried to do it before and people weren't really allowing me to do that. So Howard was like, yeah, do it, whatever you want. The kitchen's yours. He let me start doing it. And then after a couple, it just started picking up and like tons of press, and it was awesome. And it kind of allowed me to do everything else and open a restaurant.
Yeah.
So it's cool.
In terms of like running those pop-ups and doing all those things around the community and giving out things to try to community members, were there like certain flavors you were going for, or things that you wanted to explore in terms of meals or dishes?
I try with that kind of food not to like go in any direction. At CA, it's like a very classic French kind of training.
Right.
So I tend to take that, but I'm not into really heavily seasoning things or going in a particular style. I want to try to represent upstate New York food and what is grown in this area, because, the Hudson Valley is some of the best farmland in the entire country. So why not take these things that the farmers do really hard work for to make really beautiful things and just present it to people as simply as possible, whether it's just like, really nice greens with like olive oil and a little lemon and like salt. That tastes awesome. And people are blown away at how good food can taste if you really put your passion behind growing it, and then you take the time to like showcase that work.
Yeah, like really fresh food.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. There's so much value to that.
Yeah. I mean, in the winter it's hard, but
Right.
But most of the events we did were in the summer, so that helped
Right.
a lot.
And I mean, we talked a little bit about this in the article, but your experience with punk rock and putting on shows at the last minute or just doing these interesting things sort of prepared you, I think, in some ways to operate that way within the food world. You've been in a ridiculous number of bands. I don't need to tell you that, but did that help with your creativity? Did it? What would you attribute to being in that many creative projects? Too. Was it just the need to try something different, or
it was music? It's so important to me. Like, I have to do music. Like, it's such a great creative outlet. And another big part of it is for like the sense of community that comes with playing in a band. You have to put together a group of 5 people or whatever, and it's hard to get together every week and practice and write songs, and it's like a really fun, strenuous process that translates to cooking well, because it's the same kind of thing, and I like to cook the same way I do that. I love working with other chefs, working with anyone, like talking about different ideas, putting it together, and I think it creates something bigger than what just one person could create.
Yeah.
And you also sort of keep that feeling going in Nighthawks with hosting pop-ups and sort of handing over the kitchen to folks a bunch. And not only obviously brunch, but then you've had so many interesting folks through already. How do you see your role as sort of a facilitator for other folks who might be where you were?
I just want, to give people the opportunity when, they don't have a place to cook for their own. They don't have necessarily a following. They don't have the opportunity to be like, hey, I want to, be a chef at this restaurant. Hey, I want to do my own thing. I think it's a good way to bring people in that are talented, because there's so many people that are talented and can do great stuff that just don't have a way to put it out there. So I like to, help them set that up and promote it and get their name out there, and just, we already have a customer base that comes in, so they get like some of my customers, they bring their own customers, and then people try their food and they're like, oh, this person makes great food, and that's cool. So hopefully they'll remember their name and then see them again.
Yeah. In terms of like moving to Troy and choosing Nighthawks, like what was it that sort of motivated you to get your own place and like have an established spot? Like what made you feel like, yes, this is a good step for me, and now I feel like starting my own restaurant, my own business is now accessible?
It was while we were working on the brunch, Howard had told me basically at one point, he's like, let me know when you want to open a restaurant. Let's do it. And that, I kind of just kept it in the back of my mind and was like, I don't really want to open a restaurant. I don't want to be tied down to this.
Yeah.
Like, I worked a ton of different things. I worked with really cool companies. Like I worked with Heirloom Fire, which was super cool. We did like really cool catering and, all my own pop-ups and just having the freedom to do whatever. And then, about 6 months after my daughter was born, I was kind of like, I think it's time for me to like have a home base and like have some, regularity to my schedule, even if it's still crazy. But, I think now's the time, and it just so happened that the space that we're at went open, and we're like, let's look at it. And, after looking at it within like a couple of weeks, we had already signed the lease, and we're like, I guess we're opening a restaurant now. We had no business plan. We had nothing. We're like, let's just open a restaurant.
Yeah.
Me and Howard have been in that industry forever. That's all we've ever done, really. So it was kind of just like, what are we going to do? My idea in the beginning was just like burgers. I feel like Troy doesn't have any burger place. There was for a little while, but it was gone. And I want to do like burgers, but I want to do it my way, all grass fed, all handmade, like everything local. And as we progressed, it kind of turned into this thing like, well, I want to like do other stuff too during the season. I want to have a couple specials. I want to do chalkboard stuff. And then it just slowly evolved as we were working on the space. We're like, wow, this is like really nice. I don't know if we should just do burgers because space is beautiful. Let's see what kind of experiences we can give to people. And then it kind of formed. And I felt Troy was really ready for that. Like moving, I had lived in Troy a while, moved out to Columbia County, lived out there for a few years, and then moved back to Troy because I missed it. And Troy just feels like a very like real city, like working class and not like bougie in any kind of way. And so I was like, you know what? I think Troy is ready for having this kind of food, and I think people are going to be really open to it. And so far, it's proved like Troy is an awesome choice.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of different flavors going on in Troy right now. Yeah, it's really exciting.
And it's awesome. The food scene's just been like, blowing up the last few years, and it's huge. That makes such a, a great place to live.
Has that been an influence on you in any way? Like having a lot of establishments of like really different flavors and like internationally popping up and doing exciting things in the general area? Yeah,
I mean, totally. Like, I think a food scene really pushes itself based on what other people are doing. So, I think allowing like a bunch of businesses to be running and everyone enjoying them, like I see what someone's doing at another restaurant and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I have to make sure that I can make food as good or whatever, just so that, we can all continue to grow. And then the consumer learns about that. They're like, oh, wow, this place is doing local food. And then they say, oh, this place is doing local food. It's going to be better than getting like a Cisco chicken breast or whatever. If like the farmer comes in and drops it off themselves, they learn and everyone just pushes and grows together. And I think that's huge.
Yeah, definitely. And go ahead.
Oh, sure. Well, just the idea that obviously you've got Howard, who has been a staple in the music scene, obviously in Albany for decades. And Valentine's obviously was just this pillar for music in the area, and now obviously still low beat. I know you're doing Brule County Bad Boys, staying involved in music, but do you have thoughts about trying to do more in music, or is that satisfying right now, just your own band, or would you like to see more of a music scene in Troy? I mean, obviously with the shutdown of River Street, yeah. I would love there to be more in Troy. I think Troy would be a great community to have a venue. I mean, River Street Pub was great. There was shows there all the time. People came out. I think we need something. I would love to open something. That'd be cool. But, we need to find a place and do that whole thing. But I think, that'd be really important to Troy. And I think that would help it grow a lot because,
you know,
Sure.
there's a ton of restaurants, but we need other things going on that really draw people into the city.
And it does look like, I mean, people are using the spaces they can, but it's not necessarily the sort of thing that's going to foster major growth, like whether it's a community center or, you know, and obviously the Hangar on the Hudson's a great place, but
Yeah,
it's sort of
totally.
on the outskirts in terms of, you know, center
Like
proper.
downtown, sure.
Yeah, I would love to see something downtown, and I'd love to, you know, see Howard as part of that because, you know, he knows everybody
Yeah.
and he's been booking bands and doing music for, you know, so long that, you know, he's great at it and he brings interesting acts in. And I think Troy would really appreciate that and benefit
Yeah.
from that.
For sure. And it's interesting to see a lot of establishments sort of like trying to make the music scene work in what we have in Troy right now. Like sort
Totally.
of like, yeah, we'll have your band come in and do something acoustic here or there, like, you know, even if it's for like Troy Night Out stuff, like
Yeah.
Rare Form will have a band, like Superior Merch and like the Art Center. And then, you know, like having sort of like other art focused or like just like different community building events happening in and around, but it would be so much better just to have like one place that we know would be like a safe and also like friendly in terms of sound, like having a place that sounds really good and
Totally.
like can fit a lot of people on a regular basis. It's like,
Yeah.
would make such a difference.
Yeah, I mean, the acoustic stuff has its place in all those places, and it's
Right.
great. But, you know, I want to see some, like, really loud bands sometimes
Yeah, I
that just,
know.
like, you can just turn up and just, like,
Yeah.
have blast it and just people enjoy it and are having a good time. And, you know,
Yeah.
I think that's perfect for everyone, for all ages. You know, when I was a teenager, like, I just wanted loud, fast
Right.
music all the time. And, like, if I didn't have a place, if I didn't have Valentine's, I like have no idea where I would have found that. You know, there was
Yeah.
always basement shows and stuff, but you know, you get national acts coming through that, you know, the first people you hear about, you know, when you go see something like that, it just, you know, it changes your life.
Yeah, you have to have somewhere that can like fit enough people for their following. I
Yeah,
think it's just like such
exactly.
a difference. And just the fact that everyone's trying to make it work, I think says so much about the community in Troy. Like
Yeah.
you said about just like not only the food community, but the arts in general. Like people are just trying to lend a hand wherever they can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so we talked briefly about this earlier, but you've got a number of events coming up.
Yes.
That are pop-ups. I mean, you've got taste beer, and you have a literary or reading at least.
Yeah.
But just in terms of the basics, folks, you've got the chalkboard menu that goes up every Wednesday, right?
Every Wednesday night that comes up. It starts at 5 p.m. every Wednesday. So every week we write a new menu based on what's available. So usually the Saturday before, I'll do some ordering. I'll call some people. I'll look over farm lists and see what we can get, and then we get it. And then we just have to write a menu based on that. And it's really fun. It's definitely an exercise in creativity, being forced to come up with a new menu every week.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's stressful. I mean, it's always stressful cooking it and getting it ready. But like coming up with a menu sometimes is really hard, and you just don't feel inspired, especially in the winter when it's the same thing for
Yeah.
several months where you're like, I don't know how many more ways I can cook a squash or like a potato. But, you know, in the summer, it's like it writes itself because just so much food is coming in and it's so beautiful. And you can just be like, all right, I'm
Really
just going to
vibrant.
put peppers on the menu with just like olive oil and salt, and it's like delicious.
Yeah.
But
It's become a regular habit of mine to check, you know, every Wednesday to see on social media, you know, what the menu looks like.
Yeah.
And it's fun to see, you know, the different ways that you use everything. So
yeah,
it's,
Yeah.
I mean, it's super fun for me too. So that's good. Thank you.
I feel like it's like a growing movement, like in food in general now. Like I have family members who subscribe to those like ugly food boxes.
Yeah.
And then it's sort of like they get what they get, and you have to sort of come up with something to make with it because they want to like be able to eat. Like that's the reason that they're subscribing to them. So it's like more and more of that is happening where people are becoming so much more aware of like their food scene and what's around, and like have to be more creative about the way that we make it. So it's like interesting to have places that are doing that on a regular basis to be inspired by. It's like,
yeah, and
around.
you know, it's nothing new. It's like
Right.
not like this is the new way of cooking.
Yeah.
This is just the old way of cooking where like you can't get a tomato in the middle of January in
Yeah.
upstate New York. And, you know, I mean, we have some indoor people that grow it, but, you know, one of my favorite things is like not eating a tomato all year. And then all of a sudden, like the summer comes and you eat it and you're like,
so excited
this
about
is
it.
amazing. You know, like trying all these things that just like,
Exactly.
you know, it's kind of the way that I feel like it should be done. It's just better food. It's healthier. It's, you know, and I think people are really embracing that again.
Yeah.
You know, getting into CSAs. There's so many urban farms in Troy, which is another huge thing. There's, you know, and people just get involved in that, and you get a box every week, and you don't know what it is. And
Right,
then
exactly.
It's like, cook it.
Yeah.
It's great.
Like I get so excited about peaches in the
Yeah,
summer.
they're
Like
so
it just is
good.
like life changing.
But if you buy a peach, you know, at the grocery store, and it's
not
like,
gonna be good.
yeah,
Yeah, I grew up partly on a sort of a half of a dairy farm. My mother would raise cows before they were ready to be impregnated.
Yeah.
But you know, full of fruit trees and all of that, and nuts and all of that. So during the summer, we have her vast vegetable garden and the peach trees that we have to like. If you don't deal with it, the yard is full of fruit.
yeah,
You know,
totally.
To see her, you know, and I've worked with her for years with finding uses for all these things, whether it's preserving them or you know, bringing them to folks around the community. And it's so fun to have that source and know that it's reliable, and to be able to, you know, being that you're the father of a young daughter, you know, being able to bring your kid over to a tree and say, "This is where your food comes from. And
Yeah,
enjoy
totally.
this." And
It's
yes, you can
huge.
pick it off the tree. When the other kids in class still think maybe chicken is something that's made in a factory, or you know,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
I know education has been a big part of.
I had worked at the Darrow School in New Lebanon. I ran the cafeteria for a little while, and I taught there as well. And we did a project with a teacher, a gentleman, Raleigh Warburger, and he wrote this book about this teaching plan he did for the whole year. The project was The Unhappy Meal, and basically it was creating a Happy Meal from like seed to like in the bag. So we worked with the students, and they hatched chickens and they raised them, and they grew like the lettuce in the garden and the tomatoes and everything. And then when it came time to it, they like were there for the slaughter of the chickens, and they watched it. And then I taught them how to butcher the chickens, and we made the meal. And it was like a really humbling process for a lot of them, and I think it really impacted them. One student, you know, ended up working for me at Nighthawks as soon as he graduated before he went to college, because he got so into the process and seeing everything through. It just really like, you know, I remember him like coming up to me, and like everyone, you know, kind of has like tears welling up in their eyes, and he's like, I never like realized what goes into food. And I think that's so important to see, like, chicken isn't like a cellophane wrapped like piece of thing that's in there. It's a living creature that like is given in its life for you. So like respect this and make sure it has a great life. And you know, if you choose to eat meat and you want to do this is part of it. You
Yeah.
know, and you kind of have to be okay with that. The separation is kind of a problem,
Right.
and it, you know, it's just how people see it these days.
Yeah.
So also every Sunday you're doing brunch.
Every Sunday and Saturday.
Oh, okay, Saturday.
So
and
we do
Sunday.
it twice a week, and my brunch chef, Caitlin Sive, she writes a new menu every week, same as we do for dinner, and it's always really good, and
Yeah,
she
it's
crushes it, and she does really fun stuff, and it's awesome. It's popular, like, for her, and it's so good, and
Yeah.
I love to go eat it every week myself. Yeah.
And do you have the dates for your pop-ups and the reading?
So I think the reading is on April 18th.
Okay.
And that's with Joe Fitzgerald. That's an old friend of Howard's who just published a book called The Struggle is Eternal. And it's about Gloria Richardson and Black liberation. So he'll be at the restaurant doing a book signing and reading on the 18th. We do, I think it's next Tuesday coming up, we have a beer dinner with Two Roads out of Connecticut, and we usually do like burger nights with breweries, depending. Sometimes we'll do nicer pairings, and then we have one later in the month with Wolf Hollow. And that's a Tuesday. And then we're going to bring the Beer Diviner back.
Oh, cool.
And do like a nice dinner with the Beer Diviner. And that was their old space. They were there before we
Right.
were. So we're going to like kind of let them take it over again. And like, I love their beer. I think it's so good and interesting. So we're going to do some like nice food pairings with them. I just met with Scrumpy U. And I think at the end of June, we're doing a pop-up with Chef Michael Lappy, who's like, you know, one of my favorite chefs ever. He's amazingly talented, and he's coming in, and him and I are cooking together. We have done tons of pop-ups together that, I don't know, he's just very inspirational and does really cool food. So we're pairing up with Scrumpy U Cidery for that, which is in Schoharie, or one of the towns around there.
It's
one
nearby.
of those areas, yeah.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you just finally was, you know, I see a lot of chefs doing these trips to Italy or trips to wherever and these food tours and things.
Yeah.
Have you considered doing something locally with bringing folks to where your food is coming from and giving them, a, you know, like obviously you visited these places, you're in touch with the farmers all the time. Do you think there's value in that, in making people more familiar with?
Yes, and I think that would be really fun to do.
Yeah.
I would have to figure out where to find time to do that.
Right,
That'd be
yeah.
the hardest part for now. But I think that would be awesome. Is you know, I think people really appreciate seeing farms and meeting farmers and like seeing like how hard they work doing all this stuff, because it's so much work and they work so hard to really feed us all. And you know, they're the people I really look up to for that.
Well, thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah,
It's a
thank you so
pleasure.
much for having me. This is
And,
awesome.
So Nighthawks in Troy. And you should visit the website because you guys put up some pretty awesome pictures of all the stuff that's coming up and the chalkboard menu. And
Yeah, the best way to find out about like our menu every week is Instagram, probably.
Okay. Yep.
Nighthawks Troy, and then Facebook. I'm not as good about that. I'm in charge of like the social media stuff, and it's not my specialty. But I try to do the menu every week, at least a couple times a week, so people see what changes come and everything like that.
Nice.
And yeah, hopefully we'll have a good website at some point. I have a hard time with that too. That's tough.
Instagram's good.
Instagram's great.
It's where we're all living
Yeah.
now anyways. So.
Totally.
well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks guys.